and it's a pleasure to see them here. Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, President Broadband India Forum, and Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya, Deputy Director General Broadband India Forum as well. Mr. Ramachandran is known to everyone in the sector. He was a CEO of Sterling Cellular in Delhi that became SR Cellphone, that became something else. And he also, I think you would all know him as somebody who was leading Cellular Operator Association of India, and he did it for about 12 years. He worked for Vodafone for about 5 years as well. He received many, many awards for his contributions. And joining him is Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya, who is Deputy Director General at Broadband India Forum, has over 3 decades of experience. Currently is responsible for formulating inputs for government and TRI on all policy and regulatory matters such as creation of NDCP, new and cutting edge technology like 5G, IoT, M2M, etc., fourth industrial revolution, data protection, data privacy, and security. In the past, he's worked with a whole host of organizations, technology providers like Siemens or Nokia, Alcatel, Lucent, etc., etc. And it's a pleasure to have both of them with us here. And I think Mr. Bhattacharya is making the presentation, but is it going to be, we are running the presentation, Akanksha, is that true?
Yeah. Kuhu is just going to share her screen, Alok.
Yeah. Okay, great. Cool, you can start sharing the screen.
Small point from my side, please.
Yeah.
Mr. T.V. Ramachandran is going to give the introduction. He'll give the introductory remarks, and then we will take the presentation.
Fine. Okay. So, Mr. Ramachandran, your remarks, please. And when we start the presentation, you can just keep on saying next to us, and we'll keep on moving it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with the Indian Infrastructure Group and Tele.net and old friend Mr. Alok Brara and Madam Akanksha. Very pleased to share a few thoughts on this very interesting subject of public Wi-Fi, a crucial step towards digital progress. And I see that we have 3 very insightful questions posed as to drive the theme of the session. Firstly, how has the public Wi-Fi segment evolved in India? Secondly, how will the PM WANI initiative increase the internet penetration? And thirdly, how the telecom industry can collaborate to enhance broadband penetration. I think very good questions, and I'll endeavor to place a few thoughts on those. As a general introduction, we have a substantive PPT which will be run by my colleague, Mr. Debashish Bhattacharya. I'll confine myself to the initial remarks. At the outset, I would like to say that the area of public Wi-Fi is probably one of the most exciting fields today before us in India, where we have a generally mature telecom environment otherwise, and they have got tremendous ambitions, as you would all agree, for digital India and broadband for all. And I hail from Broadband India Forum, whose fundamental raison d'etre is to make broadband for all possible, affordable, ubiquitous broadband. And for a subcontinent of our size and a population of over 1.3 billion, characterized by enormous diversity, there will doubtless be challenges to the achievement of these goals. But our mobile operators are doing a great job. Mobile is a driver of broadband here, and I think 2016 we saw the watershed year when we made a belated entry into 4G, but stunned the entire world with the rapid take-up of the technology and the humongous data consumption and rock-bottom tariffs. We are now poised at yet another historic moment, this time in the field of Wi-Fi. Simply put, the concept of WANI, that is Wireless Access Network Interface, PM WANI, which was announced in December following TRA recommendations and DOT's consideration of all the proposals, is for broadband what we all know has happened in a brilliant way through Aadhaar for unique personal identification. The entire world admires that. And what UPI, Unified Payments Interface, has done for financial transactions in India. I think this is exactly the equivalent of that for telecom, WANI. The first question was, how has it evolved, public Wi-Fi over the years? That's a great question because it has not evolved at all, and thereby hangs a terrific excitement. It is not that we have got a saturated market, we have no options, we will not be able to do anything. I take a very positive view. We are at practically zero base on Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi, compared to global norms, compared to our global peers. Compared to our global peers, our penetration of public Wi-Fi hotspots availability is less than 1%, probably 0.5% of the world average. And Debu will show more statistics about that. So given that, the only way is to go up. We have no other way. And that's a tremendous opportunity for India, a tremendous opportunity for millions of micro entrepreneurs, job employment, etc. And why has it not evolved over the years? Because of various circumstances. We have got a legacy situation. We will not need to go into those aspects. But the opportunities happen now. December, the PM WANI was announced, which is a liberalized Wi-Fi environment, throwing open competition in Wi-Fi, liberalization of Wi-Fi. And that's the only way the consumer will benefit. And that is what is going to take us further ahead. PM WANI, the unique aspect of that is how it makes it available, how internet it makes it available everywhere. You might ask why, how do they do that? All these years, Wi-Fi could not progress because Wi-Fi was captive to a few operators, each one for his own subscribers for understandable reasons. They were not talking to each other in that sense. And number two, you cannot go from one Wi-Fi spot to another seamlessly. You have to re-authenticate, repayment interface, etc., which nobody wants to go into all that. So that way, that was a big, big deterrent for the growth of Wi-Fi. And PM WANI has demolished that. It's completely demolished that barrier so that now a seamless movement between public Wi-Fi hotspots is possible, and thereby the growth will happen. And with this, you come to a situation where you can really come on par with global average on Wi-Fi. And why do we need that? There are some naysayers, as usual, who say, oh, we don't need it. Mobile tariffs are very low, so why do we need Wi-Fi? They were correct maybe some time ago, but no longer, because mobile tariffs cannot remain at a low level. They are going up steadily. They have to. We have to give our mobile operators economic viability. For that, they are raising. Our tariffs have risen substantially over the last several months. They will have to rise further if we have to have healthy environment. Well, everywhere you turn, you hear of people, financial stress in operators. We cannot have that. And that's a flagship environment for the country. We have to give them health. That means higher mobile tariffs. And that will apply for mobile networks. And mobile networks, when they keep rising, Wi-Fi will become more and more attractive, which it already is. And more important than that, I'm not really concerned about the tariff benefit. Even if you say we can afford, the reason we need Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi hotspots are what the entire world recognizes for supporting mobile operators. It's a win-win situation. Mobile spectrum, mobile networks have automatic restrictions in terms of spectrum capability, the number of towers you can have, the various constraints. So capacity constraints is inherent by definition in a mobile network. So you cannot get the speeds and performance and quality. As you all know, our mobile broadband speeds are very good, but probably only 1/4 of the world's average. So we need to go up much more, much more. And that can happen if you've got public Wi-Fi capability to offload, to go from mobile to Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi is required. 70% of our time we are using broadband in a building or in a small space, where Wi-Fi will work very well. And Wi-Fi speeds, for example, even with the current technologies in India, with only 5 gigahertz spectrum and 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, what we have, it's about 30 megahertz, 30 Mbps speed. And that is more than double of what we are able to get on mobile networks. As per Ookla, that is about 12 Mbps speed is what we are getting. We don't get even that sometimes, but that is 12 Mbps, which is not sustainable, which cannot be predicted. So operators cannot guarantee you speed. But public Wi-Fi will give you more than double that. And when you do that, you get rich economic benefits. You get much more economic development, GDP contribution. And so it's a win-win for the economy, for the end user in terms of quality, and for the telecom operator, because the crunch on his capacity reduces. And mark you, when you have a public Wi-Fi hotspot running, it is not an island. It can't run by itself. The capacity, the download which you are generating in that Wi-Fi hotspot has to be necessarily transferred to the mobile operator for carriage. And so he makes his money on bandwidth, on carriage, on the data charges. So it's a win-win all through. So I am very happy to be having the opportunity to say these few words at the start of this session. And like I said at the beginning, this is the most exciting field for India, for entrepreneurs. Everybody can be an entrepreneur because the investment for a hotspot, a PDO, can range from 10,000 to 50,000, depending upon the size you're doing, not more. Weighted average for India will be about 30,000 rupees for a PDO, a personal data office, a hotspot. And you can create aggregator of hotspots, you can become PDOA, you can have lakhs of micro entrepreneurs and job opportunities. So it's a win-win all the way. With that, I'll stop my initial remarks and hand over to my colleague Debu to run the PPT. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ramachandran. Mr. Bhattacharya, welcome. We have roughly about 25 minutes or so for, let me just make sure that I have it right, looking at the agenda. Yes, we have roughly about 25 minutes left. Mr. Bhattacharya, if you can do it about 15 to 20 minutes, that will give us 5 to 10 minutes for questions and answers. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prada. Thank you to the entire team from Tele.net for having invited us. I also wish good morning to all of you, including Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, President Broadband India Forum, and the entire bunch of attendees and participants who are attending this event. So I would now take over and run the presentation which has been provided by Broadband India Forum. Over to the host to kindly move on to slide number 1, please. So my presentation starts with, why do we need Wi-Fi? What is the importance? So as we know, typically, and Mr. Ramachandran has already given a background, that Wi-Fi is essential in more ways than one. We need to proliferate Wi-Fi simply because broadband hasn't reached everywhere in this country, and we have a long way to go. We have only barely about, if you take even on an average about 1.4 broadband connections per person, we have unique number of only about barely 500 million broadband subscribers. And as we know, we are a country of 1.3 billion. So we have almost 1.5 times more to connect. And we can not do it, as we all know, through only one technology, as in the case of cellular. We need a plethora of technologies, and one of the most important technologies is Wi-Fi, which we need to probably cover the rest of the country and provide broadband everywhere. The other reason why Wi-Fi actually is required has been accentuated since the pandemic broke out last year. We have seen the need, and the new working environment has changed from what is work from office to work from home, or rather work from everywhere. It is the new normal, and it has now been even given an official stamp of recognition by almost all corporates, and even government has now recognized that work from home and work from everywhere is a new norm. Given the fact that we are entering into a smart age, a digital age, you're going to have probably Wi-Fi inbuilt into almost all future gadgets, be it the washing machines, the TVs, the tube lights, and the refrigerators. Everywhere we will have Wi-Fi inbuilt into the system. Not only that, recognition of the importance of Wi-Fi has been made by the 3GPP, the global standardization body. In fact, Wi-Fi now being integrated into the 3GPP standards as one of the standards to help promote 5G in future. That shows very clearly the recognition that Wi-Fi has now gained, and that the two schools which used to run in parallel, we used to have Wi-Fi and we used to have 5G or the cellular mobile on one hand, are now getting to a stage where they're trying to integrate with each other. They're trying to converge with each other. Very clearly shows that each sector recognizes the importance of the other. And of course, needless to say, that Wi-Fi requires spectrum. It is a wireless technology. It runs on unlicensed spectrum. Globally, if you compare what India has to what is available in emerging as well as in developed economies, today we have a total of about 689 megahertz of unlicensed spectrum. If you take 2.4 and 5 gigahertz together, if you compare it with the what is available in the West or in other growing economies, you will find that India is almost 1 by 20th of what is available in other parts. In fact, some of the developed economies have almost 15,000 megahertz, almost 15 gigahertz of unlicensed spectrum. So we have a long way to catch up. Next slide, please. A little bit about global outlook and stats, very important. In terms of digital divide, I just mentioned that today India has a long way to go. We are at about 500 million broadband unique subscribers, and we have to get to 1.3 billion. So we have not even crossed 50% that way. As you see here, half of the world needs to be connected. 3/4 of Africa and 5/6 of Latin America needs access to quality, affordable broadband. And that is why Wi-Fi is probably one of the most amiable technologies which can help us get there. It is essential for economic and social well-being. Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, just before me, pointed out there is the data to suggest the increase in Wi-Fi penetration and how it will lead to growth in GDP as well as in the socio-economic well-being of the populace at large. In terms of mobile data traffic offloading to Wi-Fi, it's a very important thing. Mr. Ramachandran spoke about it, that the quality of mobile broadband can be improved simply with the help of data offloading to Wi-Fi, because as we know, growing from Cisco WANI data, from where we have quoted these figures, most of the data, the video downloading happens when a person is stationary rather than when a person is mobile. Number one. Number two, people look for a Wi-Fi hotspot to be able to actually download rather than do it when they are on the move. So all this points out to the fact that we need more and more of Wi-Fi. We need more and more of public Wi-Fi to be made available so that more data traffic can be offloaded from the mobile networks to the Wi-Fi network, thereby helping the customer in the end, as also improving the quality of the mobile broadband. We also believe that India today is grossly underconnected when it comes to number of households, or more than 450 million households worldwide are estimated to be connected. This is from Wi-Fi Alliance report. And by 2022, we expect 53% of global internet traffic to be serviced by Wi-Fi. 20 and 27% by cellular and wired network, clearly showing the importance of Wi-Fi today. This is also taken from data from one of the biggest Wi-Fi vendors, Ruckus. Coming to the shipments of Wi-Fi devices, we expect Wi-Fi devices to touch 30 billion by the year 2022, again taken from Ruckus. We also have that cellular data usage while cellular data usage on smartphones is growing, the Wi-Fi data growth is dramatically outpacing it. This is taken again from the Ericsson report, Mobility Report 2020. Over to you, next slide, please. A very important stat here. It shows where we stand today in terms of public Wi-Fi hotspots vis-a-vis some of the developed and developing economies. If you look at this row number 5, If India today has approximately, and this is based on a 2019 report by Digi Analysis, India has 3 lakh used to have 3 lakh 6,000 hotspots in 2019. Probably it has grown by a couple of lakhs since then. Using that as the benchmark, we benchmarked the number of hotspots in some of the other countries like US, China, UK, Indonesia, and we found that almost all of them, even a small country like Indonesia, has 20 times the number of hotspots as compared in terms of the number of hotspots per million persons. They are at about 20 times higher than India. And if you look at countries like US, they're at almost about 900 times. Even the global average, when you average it over more than 100 countries, India is outnumbered by a figure of 1:200. That means we have a long way to go. The global average per million number of hotspots required per million person is 46,000, whereas we are at a paltry figure of 236. So we have a long way to go and catch up in terms of the number of public Wi-Fi hotspots. And there comes the importance of the new public Wi-Fi hotspot, liberalized public Wi-Fi hotspot policy, which is the PM WANI. Over to you, the next slide, please. This captures again on a global standing, where do we compare in terms of number of hotspots per 100,000 people. If you see the first graph, we are at the extreme right-hand corner, way below many of the other countries, including some of the countries which have a lower GDP than us. If you look at the number of hotspots per 100 square kilometers, again, India being a vast country, of course, you can grant them the fact that that could be one of the reasons why we are probably doing a little better than some of the low-lying countries. But if you look at our position, we are about 4th from the bottom. Over to next slide, please. If you look at the national objectives, public Wi-Fi is key to achieving digital India. No doubt about it. We've got a long way to go, and one of the ways to proliferate ubiquitous and affordable broadband is public Wi-Fi. The NDCP talks about doing a target of 10 million hotspots by 2022. Actually, we have already missed one of the NDCP targets, which was due on 2020. We were supposed to achieve 50 lakh or 5 million hotspots. We have not even achieved 1/10 of that yet. India, as I mentioned, as on August 2019, Digi Analysis data was at 306,000 hotspots. As per the then global average in 2017, the global average was 1 hotspot for every 150 persons, 2016 data. India would have needed at that time 8 million hotspots. And if you see where we are, you can very clearly see where what a long way to go. But I'm not trying to sound as if it's a bad thing. There's an opportunity at the end of the tunnel. Just because we are lagging behind, it means we have a long way to go, and we can go there if we have the right policies and we can implement it quickly. The last mile unbundling was one of the major roadblocks for unleashing the potential of public Wi-Fi. This has happened with the help of PM WANI. As Mr. Ramachandran has pointed out, it is a win-win proposition for all stakeholders in the ecosystem. The consumers benefit because of the growth of Wi-Fi, and they can have internet access everywhere. The industry benefits because it's a new revenue stream for them, which they hadn't got before, which means they can service the PDOs and PDOAs and thereby make more money in the bargain. And the government gets more money because there is going to be more usage and therefore more revenues and thereby more taxation, which goes into the government coffers. Therefore, creation of millions of public Wi-Fi hotspots, which is the core objective of the PM WANI policy, would have innumerable benefits for all stakeholders in the ecosystem. Next slide, please. Why India needs public Wi-Fi? I think I've said it all, but I think we'll not look at it from the enterprise angle as well. We've touched upon issues like mobile data offload. It's an important thing. India today lags behind other countries when it comes to mobile data offload, simply because public Wi-Fi is not available in India. There's hardly any hotspots available. Need to improve India mobile broadband speeds. Yes, as was mentioned earlier as well, that the quality of mobile broadband will improve once the number of public Wi-Fi hotspots increase. Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, a very important aspect. This as we move into the new digital age, we need to revolutionize and transform our manufacturing processes. Smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, will be fueled by the likes of emerging technologies in the Wi-Fi space, which includes Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E. We'll briefly talk about this later on in the slide. Increasing the spread of FTTX, very important, given the fact that now we have work from home and work from anywhere. We need more and more of Wi-Fi indoors as well, and not just outdoors. So that to be able to provide Wi-Fi indoors and to spread Wi-Fi indoors will help in spread of FTTX indoors as well, which will help in broadband coverage indoors, and thereby enable work from anywhere and work from home in a more friendly manner. Next slide, please. I'll skip this because these are opportunities. We've talked about it. It's available in public venues, private venues, tourist venues. We need Wi-Fi just about everywhere. There is no question about it. Next slide, please. Yeah, let's look at what is different in PM WANI. PM WANI policy enables seamless delivery of Wi-Fi services via PDOs, public data offices, and PDOAs, public data office aggregators, and app providers. It offers affordable rates and better quality of experience, both for Wi-Fi as well as for mobile. It will lead to explosive growth in business and employment opportunities for small, local, and village level entrepreneurs, the kirana stores, the tea shops, especially in rural areas. Mr. Ramachandran spoke about it. I wouldn't go into further detail. It enables seamless Wi-Fi roaming without the hassles of repeated KYC and authentication. Again, an aspect which Mr. Ramachandran touched about.
Mr. Bhattacharya, just about 5 more minutes, please.
Okay. So we will. It will help in overall socio-economic development and inclusion, as well as in rural digital connectivity, thereby accelerating achievement of Digital India. Next slide, please. To continue with the benefits of PM WANI. Since this was one of the questions that were posed as well to us. So it presents a great opportunity for local manufacturing of Wi-Fi hotspots, thereby giving a boost to the Atmanirbhar mission of the Government of India and leads to more job creation. By a conservative estimate, it is believed that each hotspot will lead to a creation of 2 to 3 direct and indirect employment opportunities, thereby potentially generating 20 to 30 million job opportunities in the small and medium scale sectors. At the PDO, PDOA, and app provider level, this is likely to encourage large-scale entrepreneurship and innovation. It will also help attract large number of investments into the sector. Now, I would like to make a small intervention here. Unlike the case of the TSPs or ISPs, where we have a few of them and the entire investment goes into either the TSPs or the ISPs so that they can grow their portfolio. Here, with the help of small investments into these micro entrepreneurships, which are going to mushroom after the PM WANI policy takes off, we are going to have a large number of small investments into millions of entrepreneurs into the entrepreneur business, thereby leading to a very large investment going into the sector, which would probably not even just match what you could probably get from a large TSP or an ISP, given the fact that there are a limited number of them, but it probably even will surpass them. Next slide, please. Future view. So I'd like to briefly touch upon something that I spoke about, which is Wi-Fi 6. Now, Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E is the latest technology in the Wi-Fi arena. 6 is basically a technology which is comparable to the 5G standards. The speeds are extremely high of the range of about 10 gigabits per second, and the latencies are extremely low. They are almost comparable to 5G. The difference between 6 and 6E is while 6 works in the 5 gigahertz band, the 6E works exclusively in the 6 gigahertz band, which has been delicensed globally in many parts of the world, including the US. It's, as I mentioned, much faster, offers better spectrum efficiency. And this is a technology, Wi-Fi 6, that we believe can actually help in the process of creation of 10 million PDOs, which is the NDCP target, and will help to foster or fuel the huge data generation and data consumption that is likely to come about once the 10 million PDOs take off in this country. Next slide, please. 6 gigahertz is the spectrum. I've spoken a little bit about it. 1200 megahertz is the band. 5925 to 7125. Actually, it should read megahertz. My apologies. It needs correction. The 6 gigahertz band is it's the latest in Wi-Fi technology. It will help fuel the latest technology, the spectrum efficient 6E technology. It will help in increasing the amount of spectrum by 3x once it is delicensed. We request the government to take heed of this particular aspect. We believe that with the help of 6 gigahertz spectrum getting delicensed and Wi-Fi 6E kicking in, the TSPs can offload traffic inside the residential buildings, which will be comparable to the speeds available outside. It will also help in majorly in the growth of the IoT in this country, because it will help to both narrowband and broadband IoT. It will also lead to fuel innovative technologies and services for new devices and applications, including the applications related to short range but high capacity devices. It will also help improve rural broadband connectivity and provide what is called PURA, which is provision of urban services in rural areas, which means while 5G will kick in into the urban areas, you will get a 5G-like service also in the rural areas, and with the help of 6 gigahertz and Wi-Fi 6 technology. Next slide, please. Use cases: digital healthcare, rural broadband, indoor coverage in building solutions, Industry 4.0. Next slide, please. Delicensed V-band. I'd like to briefly touch upon this. V-band is got unique propagation characteristics. We're talking of the entire 14 gigahertz, 57 to 71, while we believe that the lower part of the band, 57 to 64, which suffers from atmospheric propagation characteristics like ionization and oxygen absorption, could be very well utilized for delivering high gigabit capacity and high-speed broadband for short-range devices, and for improving secondary access like Wi-Fi access. This band could be delicensed, and the upper part of the band, or the extended V band from 64 to 71, could be offered to the TSPs for them to make use of for backhaul purposes as well as for other usage. This would be a win-win situation which will enable innovation in the lower part of the V band, and as well as ensure that there is a backhaul bandwidth available to meet the 5G extensive bandwidth requirements of 5G in the going forward for the telcos. Over to you. Next slide, please. How can they collaborate? Well, as Mr. T.V. Ramachandran has already mentioned, this requires all stakeholders to come forward. We would need the support of the PDOs and the PDOAs to provide the access. We would need the support of the VNOs, the satellite operators, the ISPs and the TSPs to provide the bandwidth. We also need a combination of technologies like fiber, towers, ENV bands, and SATCOM to provide the middle mile access, while the last mile access can be provided by a mix of fiber, SATCOM, cable, fixed wireless access. So you could have a mix of all these technologies together to provide what is most needed today for the country, which is to have Wi-Fi affordable, ubiquitous, and quality and reliable Wi-Fi everywhere to all our citizens in the country and to achieve the goal of broadband for all and vision of digital India. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharya. Kuhu, if you can stop sharing the presentation so that we can have the video. We have about, I guess we can have about 5-6 minutes by extending this a little bit for question and answers. I'll take a few from the audience. Question from Jun Yi Yu. How would you address the connection issues that public Wi-Fi networks usually have? They are often less reliable and much slower than mobile data network.
Okay. TV sir, would you like to answer that question, or do you want? I would leave. Okay. Fair. So connectivity. So what we are talking about is public Wi-Fi versus mobile broadband. Now, when we talk about mobile broadband, as mentioned by Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, and as well as by me in my presentation, you see, mobile broadband suffers inherently from the lack of availability of sufficient spectrum to meet the broadband data speeds and the quality of broadband that you require from it. That is why you need public Wi-Fi to actually help supplement the mobile broadband so that you continue to get high quality mobile broadband as well as you get sufficient reliability on the mobile broadband. So Wi-Fi actually helps supplement the mobile broadband and at the same time ensures that all the high quality, all the high capacity downloads, the video downloads, which is going to play a predominant role in the rural areas, can actually be taken on the Wi-Fi network while it leaves the mobile broadband for your other applications, which includes mobility as well. I hope I have answered it.
Yes. Next question is, the data rates are currently low. Given that context, what is the business case proposition for telcos to deploy public Wi-Fi?
I again would request Mr. Ramachandran if he would like to answer that question, if you wish.
Thank you. See, the question, as I understand it, you're asking what is the business case for telcos to deploy? But I think that's missing the point. Telcos are already eligible to deploy. They have not deployed it because if you take the position of a telco, it's understandable. Why would I deploy a Wi-Fi hotspot which will give me lower revenue compared to what I can earn on the mobile network?
I understand. I think the question, yeah, that's a fair point. That's next question from Gaurav Kumar Srivastava. What role do you see tower cos playing in expanding public Wi-Fi?
Oh, they can play a huge role because when we talk of the requirement of 10 million hotspots, if I were a tower co and I had a few lakhs of towers, around every tower I can create a Wi-Fi hotspot, and that's in every area. And I can render service, I can augment the quality of the mobile network as well as earn more revenues from the tower co side. So, because every tower co becomes a spot for Wi-Fi.
Okay. Mr. Bhattacharya, the next question is, can you talk about cyber security risk in public Wi-Fi space and what steps are being undertaken to address the issue?
Okay, thank you. The latest Wi-Fi standards .11ax, which is the genesis of the Wi-Fi 6 technology, actually takes into account 256-bit encryption, which was not the case with the earlier standards, the Wi-Fi 5, which was a 128-bit encryption. So they have already taken and built into the existing technology itself, the new technology, the enhanced encryption, thereby ensuring the risk of interference and the risk of data protection is mitigated or minimized, I should say, to a large extent, because it is already part of the standard itself.
Okay. Do you have any examples of successful public Wi-Fi deployments in India?
Well, as I think it was evident in the presentation as well as what in Mr. Ramachandran's opening remarks, you see, public Wi-Fi has not, till PM WANI policy was announced. What was the need of the PM WANI policy? The PM WANI policy addressed two fundamental problems, which the public Wi-Fi networks of the past, from the last 20 years, since the first ISP network was licensed in 2000, probably 3, had not taken off, is twofold. One, the public Wi-Fi networks would be only.
Debu, may I please interrupt?
Yeah,
I'm sorry
please.
if I may.
Sure, please.
My simple answer to the question is there was no public Wi-Fi network possible because your system did not allow for a liberalized Wi-Fi. You could provide public Wi-Fi only if you had a license, only if you were a TSP or ISP. So how would that take off? Because it harms the TSP's business to put his own Wi-Fi when he can get higher tariff charges on networks.
All right.
Okay. So I think that's begging the question.
I think, thank you. That is a very candid response. Thank you for that.
It's a fact. I
appreciate that. Okay, I think we've gotten a better understanding. I for sure have gotten a better understanding of public Wi-Fi and all the issues, and also what public Wi-Fi is and what it is not. And for that, we are very grateful to Mr. Ramachandran. And quite apart from the fact that it's great to see you again, I remember the very first event we did in 2000 in New Delhi. You were there when we had, I think, if you remember,
Yeah,
Mr. Rajagopalan, you were there, Mr. Sunil Mittal were there, launching of the
Absolutely.
magazine. And it's wonderful to see you
Exactly.
again. And of course, we are always grateful to Mr. Bhattacharya, who has continued to help us right through the years in his different avatars. And
Thank you.
Thank you
very,
very
very much, sir. Thank you, and
Thank
wonderful
you.
to see you.